political campaign. Well, in a lot of countries, you can't do that anymore because the state now controls the media. The state censors the internet. Brazil just banned Twitter because Elon Musk refused to censor user speech. Kamala Harris says that Musk better behave himself or he will, quote, lose his
privileges, and it should be taken down. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation, and that has to stop.
She thinks, and the Democratic establishment thinks, that free speech is a privilege. Well, you know and I know that it's a right. And if Kamala Harris is elected, the powers behind her will quash that right. They're already halfway there. It will be too late by 2028.
Hello all, it's James Johnson, aka Sulfur Blade. Welcome back to my channel, welcome back to my content, and welcome back to the Let's Play of Suzerain. Okay, in the last episode, I had a bit of a quandary about dealing with Orso Hawker, the chief of the Supreme Court, and I was thinking that I might be able to double-cross him. After doing a little bit of research, I figured out, no, that's not really going to be possible to do, so I rewound a bit and basically played through, and I refused the Supreme Court's offer to basically instill martial law on their behalf and become their puppet. So we're not going that route. I changed it. I told the Supreme Justice to go piss off. Anyway, so here we are. I hit continue, and now we're at the beginning of turn 3 in the game. So let's go ahead and read some of these reports and see what's going on. Communist books burned in Boren. Local residents gathered thousands of books that they claimed to be spreading communist and socialist propaganda at the Century Park in Boren and set the books on fire. Aggressive slogans targeted the Red Youth and the Workers' Party of Blodia and the Communist Party of Swordland were shouted. Youth groups from the local party offices of the USP and NFP also joined in with the burning. The fire department was dispatched and the protesters dispersed on their own. Alright, Young Swords and the NFP flags burned. A massive counter-protest against Young Swords, led by a local politician known to be aligned with the Red Youth, resulted in many injuries and property damage. Subsequently, Young Swords and National Front Party flags were burnt, which caused tensions to escalate. Local police departments and protesters... local police dispersed the protesters by sundown. Excuse me. Okay, and Sarna. Bergian security forces have arrested 3 priests at 2 different Nurdi sanctuaries in Sarna after finding links to insurgent activities. The reports came from an elderly man who wanted to pray in peace, but instead found himself invited to join the Bloodish Freedom Front by a state-sanctioned priest. Further incidents indicate that the BFF is pushing for a local recruitment drive in different sanctuaries across the region. Narbel reports lack of hospitals. The mayor of Narbel has reported that their hospitals are overburdened and they are unable to respond to the needs of the citizens. He complained about the months-long waiting list for terminally ill patients on top of the capacity issues. It was also noted that the facilities are still largely using outdated technology. Recession hits farmers again. As per the latest news from Lackavan, the farming industry has taken another hit as a result of the secession. Has taken another hit as a result of the recession. There are reports that 16% of all wheat in Lackavan is rotting in barns due to a lack of buyers. Farmers are requesting additional funds from the government to survive the year. Wait, what? As per the latest news from Lockman, the farming industry has taken another hit as a result of the recession. There are reports that 16% of all wheat in Lockman is rotting in barns due to lack of... Okay. It's barns, so that would be the farmers' barns, so they haven't been purchased yet. Alright. Farmers are requesting additional... I got it. I thought, when I originally read it, it sounded like the wheat was rotting in storage. Like it had left the farms already, but wasn't making it to the tables, if you will. But no, it hasn't even left the farm yet. Okay, legislative debate on the repeal of the EPA. The Grand National Assembly was the stage of conscientious debate today over the proposed repeal of the Energy Protection Act of 1932. Arguments both for and against the repeal were put forth with Franz Richter of the PFJP and the USP reformist wing leader Albin Calvin leading the faction advocating for the repeal. They argue that such a move would foster economic growth and increase foreign investment. However, the United Swordland Party and the National Front Party, under the leadership of Gloria Torrey and Casaro Gibner, respectively defended the act vehemently, citing the need for Swordland to protect its strategic industries from foreign control. The final decision now hinges on the vote, which will be held the following month. And what's going on in the news? Ann Raqqa emerges as buffer zone and global trade power. Doesn't sound that interesting. Grace nations unite to counter ideological influence, forge parallel financial order. In a historic move, the member state of the Guild of Royal Allies for Commercial Exchange have announced a series of joint initiatives aimed at countering the growing influence of the socialist and capitalist ideologies while establishing a parallel financial and trade order. So this is the monarchies, if you will. The unprecedented collaboration comes at a time when traditional monarchies are increasingly being challenged by geopolitical shifts and global economic trends. Okay. Van Horten blames Volksland for the missing fishing vessel. Okay, so hostilities are heating up even more between Agnolia and Volksland. Lockman Times, Workers' Union puts pressure for promised benefits. Damn unions. Okay, Economist, upcoming government budget changes. At the top of economy experts in the country, we have been watching the upcoming changes in the government budget very closely. President Anton Rein's first internal economic challenge lies ahead, and we will see if he can prove his capability as a leader who can think ahead. The potential ramifications of diverting the funding to certain governmental branches has always been a point of contention for any leader, and it is no different for this case. We will see if President Rein can hold on to the promises he has given during the election campaign. School poisoning in Ribble. Police have arrested the principal of a high school in Ribble in southern Bergia, where 12 students died after eating a free meal laced with pesticide? What kind of screwed up person would do this? A principal, even. The students, aged between 15 and 70, died after eating lunch. A local dish of zabla, that's my favorite meal, from what I learned, cooked at a school in a poverty-stricken city. Police have started the investigation to solve the mystery of how the pesticide ended up in the food. That's terrible. Okay. And here we are. Barbecue with Frank at the residence, at my residence. It was Saturday afternoon, my first break from work in what felt like years, and the weather couldn't have been more perfect, trying to keep my mind off of the upheaval sparked by the circus assassination I lit the backyard grill. Monica and Deanna were out shopping for craft supplies, and I'd given the staff the day off. It was just myself and Frank at home. Wasn't sure how he felt about me at the moment, but I did know how he felt about barbecue ribs. Our cook had left some marinating in the refrigerator. Sure enough, as soon as Frank glimpsed the grill and the meat, he stepped outside to join me. Come to spend some time with your old man, have you? Sure, if you can spare a few minutes of your busy schedule. Touché. Children who talk back to their father don't get dinner. Fan these flames, will you? Look, son, I'm preoccupied with matters of national... I'm sorry, I know I haven't been around very often lately, but I'm happy to see you now. It's okay, I know you've got the most stressful job in the country, and you've got to feed your family on top of it all. We both chuckled. I turned to tend the fire. Here, let me try. He grabbed the fan and started quickly waving it over the coals. The fire roared to life. He turned to look at me with a grin on his face as if he was expecting praise. Not bad, son, not bad. Thank you, sir. It is in our utmost interest to fulfill our duties with precision. The grilling shall commence in exactly 1 minute and 32 seconds. That was a spot-on impersonation of Lucian. We looked at each other for a second, then burst out laughing. I realized my throat was parched. There was a 6-pack of beer in the kitchen. Why don't you bring us a couple of beers? He looked at me in disbelief. You mean I can... But Mom told me... He stopped himself, quickly ran inside, and returned with 2 beers. We cracked them open, clinked the bottles, and gazed out at the city skyline. For a moment, my thoughts flashed back to my childhood and my relationship with my own father. My father was a poor man who struggled to provide for us on his meager income. He put me to work on the farm long before I was Frank's age, and even then, we couldn't always make ends meet. Yet, we were always close as a family. Now that I was president, I knew Frank would never face the same hardships I had. I couldn't deny that I felt a bit jealous. Dad, can I ask you something? We are family. You can ask anything. It's just, I feel like there's so much you've been hiding from me about your past and about what's going on right now. Like at dinner that night after the ball, you told me everything was under control, but it wasn't, was it? I know what's happened in the 20s. We learned all about it in school. Now with the protests and the riots, is it going to be the same thing? Dad, is there going to be civil war in Swordland? I hope not. He let out a sigh. But what was it like back then? Uncle Peter said the 2 of you went through a lot. I'm not a kid anymore, you can tell me. Before I could gather my thoughts, the familiar images started flashing before my eyes. Images of soldiers advancing towards me and my friends, weapons drawn, of people I knew, friends and neighbors being dragged through the streets and murdered in alleyways. The shock and grief on the face of fathers and mothers and orphan children. Those were dark times. It seems like it. But you're nearly a grown man. Let's talk about it. Frank leaned forward in the chair, his eyes wide. Tell Frank about the coup of 1927. I was barely older than you are now. I was studying law at Holsworth State University. I was a freshman, excited and young. I had just left the classroom to go back home as I heard the sound of multiple vehicles approaching the campus gates. As they got closer, I realized they were military camouflage trucks and tanks carrying hundreds of soldiers. The same soldiers that were supposed to protect Swordland citizens pointed their guns at us. They immediately took control of the facilities. One of my friends asked what was going on and was arrested immediately. More people got angry and gathered in protest. Seeing the crowd gathering, I knew something was going to happen, something bad. I decided that it was impossible to go against our men and ran from the scene. Ran away from my friends who were getting arrested and shot to save my own dear life like a coward. I still feel my flight was shameful. I should have stood my ground. No one could sleep that night because of gunshots and sounds of boots. I can't forget the screams to this day. It was time to tell him about the Civil War. It was right after I met your mother. We had both joined the same political debate group to push for change after the coup of 27. Eventually I became convinced I wasn't doing enough, so I joined the Young Swords. Then one night it happened. Two different factions in the army, one of them led by the fascist General Luderen, and the other by the socialist General Ricard, started fighting again, each other. It was a bloodbath. Nowhere was safe. So we organized a protest. One day against Ricard. We were fed up with the army toying with the country again. I paused for a moment before continuing. Soldiers were waiting for us. I knew something was going to happen, something bad. I decided that it was impossible to go against our men and ran away from the scene once more. Years later, I still felt that I was right. How could mere civilians go against a fully trained army, regardless of how just their cause was? That's enough for today. It's okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked you about it. I know I don't understand how easy my life is sometimes. One more thing, though. I know you joined the Young Swords back then. Do you mind if I ask why? I had to survive somehow in that environment, and I made a choice. Sorry for bombarding you with questions. I know I complain sometimes, but my problems are nothing compared to what you went through. What problems? Before Frank could say anything else, I heard the front door unlock. Deanna and Monica's voices and the sound of rustling shopping bags filled the house. Frank, all right, I'll be upstairs until dinner. Frank went in and dashed upstairs. I took a long sip from my beer, looking at the city and now setting sun. I hoped that talking to Frank about my past had been the right decision. Part of me felt as if some sort of burden had been lifted. But I had the same nightmares again that night. Alright, what's going on here? Read the report. Morna industrial output concerns. The mayor of Morna has reported that their industrial output numbers in this year are 12% lower than last year. They are requesting additional support to improve their industrial capacity, including machinery and personnel, to combat the downward trend. With the construction of several new factories in Morna, the mayor started his belief that an economic upturn in the city is still possible if government investment succeeded. According to current projections, Morna is set to lose an additional 2% of industrial output next year. However, recent data from the Municipalities suggest that an investment worth several billion SR will stop the downward trend and increase the industrial output in a short amount of time. Many members of the USP, led by Albin Calvin and the reformist wing of the party, clarified their demands from the government in the party Congress for the upcoming constitutional reform. Albin Calvin stated that without ministry reform, they won't be able to stand behind the new reform package. Yesterday, around 11 a.m., a prison riot started in Ward C of Antel Rock Prison, which was eventually suppressed. Ward C is generally used for keeping political prisoners, and the riot started when a warden was killed by a bloodish political prisoner. 4 guards and 21 prisoners died. 134 were injured. H3 report from Underhall. Underhall construction project manager for H3 Highway has reported that the project has been progressing well, and they have already started laying down the foundation of the ground retaining walls, bridges, and earthworks. Project supervisors from the government confirmed the report, saying that most of the preliminary work has already been done by Underhall and everything was going according to schedule. Alright, that is good to hear. No, not yet. Any other reports? Off. The ATO pledges financial and military aid to Agnolia. In an emphatic display of international solidarity, the Arcasian Treaty Organization has committed its significant financial and military aid to Agnolia, located in the heart of eastern Maricopa, a region rife with geopolitical complexities. Agnolia stands at the crossroads of economic challenges and potential security threats from Runsberg and Vogsland. Their aid package is designed to enhance Agnolia's economic stability and bolster its military capabilities, fortifying it against possible CSP advances and further Rumsberg hostilities as part of the ATO's larger goal to secure its capitalist allies against the spread of socialism. This assistance displays the ATO's commitment to supporting its member nations in their time of need. Rizia advocates for energy partnership. The Rizian Oil and Gas, ROG, has extended a co-investment proposal for Swordland's ambitious Gassam energy venture. King Ramus emphasized the bilateral benefits of such a cooperation and its potential in bolstering the region's energy security. He also stressed that this cooperative venture could form the bedrock of a stronger economic alliance, further binding our nations. Okay, Whole Sword Post. Green Act, a misdirected effort. The Green Act, heavily backed by the, seems out of touch with the prevailing political climate in the country. It suggests a disconnect between policymakers and the ordinary Swordish citizen, whose immediate concerns are more likely to center around the economy, job security, and social services. While the environmental conservation is important, it should not overshadow the more pressing needs of the people. Okay. Attacker opened fire on protesters, 17 dead. Green, a threat to growth. The newly proposed Green Act, aimed at nurturing a sustainable industrial approach in Grenai, raises concerns of stifling economic growth. Gassam in turmoil. A leadership crisis. The recent financial distress facing Gassam, one of the pillars of Swordland's economy, highlights a glaring issue at its helm. Our investigation reveals a disconcerting narrative of mismanagement spearheaded by Ewald Alfonso and the current CEO, known to maintain close ties with Minister Manger. Evidently, their leadership is characterized by a striking absence of cost-cutting initiatives and measures to enhance operational efficiency. Gassam, formerly a beacon of economic prosperity, is now struggling under the weight of poor leadership, underscoring the urgent need for managerial overhaul. Rizian Oil and Gas expresses interest in Gassam. FC Gelsword and FC Enrica Derby postponed due to protests. Alright, what does these communist papers say? The Imperative Green Bill awaits signature. The proposed Green Act, championed by forward-thinking members of the Assembly, could be a transformative step for Swordland. Undemocratic elections of Swordland. Swordland has an electoral threshold of 10%. This means any political party that are under 10% of the vote can't even enter the Assembly. This is the very reason why the United Swordland Party holds 52% of the seats in the Assembly today. It is also the reason why the largest ethnic minority of Swordland is non-existent in Swordish politics. The last election has shown that pro-Bloodish WPB had an enormous voter base of just above 9%, but it still failed to meet the 10% threshold and couldn't enter politics. CSPS workers report under scrutiny. A recent report on workers' rights released by the reformist faction within the Continental Security Pact has stirred internal discourse, attracting both considerable attention and critical skepticism. While the report offers an ostensibly comprehensive overview of labor conditions within the CSP, member nations and critics argue that the data could benefit from a more nuanced and detailed analysis. Anraka broadens economic horizons. Anraka is taking strategic steps towards diversifying its economic portfolio. Okay. And then presidential visit to Narbel. It's the last thing to do. I was traveling to the snow-covered city of Narbel in the Nargis region for the Rural Development Forum organized by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education. The mountainous city of Narbel had gritty tones to it. It was mostly regarded as one of the poorer cities in Swordland. Its people were hardy and wary. Even after the discovery of natural resources in the area, years of neglect by the central government were apparent on the buildings and the general infrastructure. Natural resources, namely gas and oil, were now under the control of Gassam, which elevated the corporation to a place of power. My task in this forum was mainly symbolic: fake smiles and handshakes with oil barons, meeting with local politicians, but most importantly of all, making sure that Narbel did not feel like it was forgotten by the government. The scenery so far, however, was a reflection of Narbel's neglect. Main roads to the city were not maintained well. There were many bumps and empty, discolored spots in the asphalt. Navigating and swerving to avoid inconveniences, our motorcade finally started nearing the city. As if my discomfort from the bumpy ride was apparent to him, Sergei rolled down the partition window. "We'll be arriving at the Hotel West in a few minutes, sir." Well, I don't want him to take it as if I'm critiquing his driving, but I want to open up some sort of dialogue with Sergei. I like the guy. "Can't say it's been a comfortable ride, Sergei." "I'm sorry, sir. The roads here aren't the best." After a moment, Sergei started to smile under his mustache. He's happy I'm not comfortable. Okay, I'll pretend not to notice. Sir, I just want to say that it's been great these last 2 months. As you know, my wife Susan recently gave birth to our son, sir, and now my daughter just started at a very good high school in Holsword. That's great news, Sir Jay. I'm happy for you. I appreciate it, sir. Truly. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to afford a good private school if she scored less in the entrance exam. But I shouldn't have made my insecurities get to me. Erica outsmarts me all the time. I'm very proud to have a daughter like her. I also hope that Deanna will grow to be like her mother someday. I'm sure she will, sir. After all, she is the daughter of a lion and a lioness. My daughter looks up at the First Lady for inspiration, and it's not just limited to my daughter, sir. She is an inspiration for almost all women in the country. But at the same time, it must be hard for the First Lady as well. All this attention, adjusting to this new high-profile life, and a husband that has great responsibility. It is hard for both of us. It must be, sir. We sometimes forget the important people in life between all the responsibility and rush. You know, those we care for. I agree. Sergei continued after a moment of silence. Have I told you, sir, we named my son George? The doctor said he is very healthy, and thankfully so is my wife. Tell me more about Susan. What kind of person is she? She has a good heart. Her family comes from Sarna, so they are a little more traditional. She's beautiful, of course, but what I really admire is her selflessness. Selflessness is a respectable trait to have. It should be mutual. That is what matters most. Sergei sighed. I've already started thinking about their university education, especially Erica. I want to send her to a good private school, but with the current state of the economy, it's going to be hard for us. I'm gonna give away my only money. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. You know what? I can support the education of your children. Mr. President, there's no way I can. With one look from me, Sergei cut his sentence short and nodded at me after removing his hat. Mr. President, I don't know how I can ever repay you for this. Thank you so much. I hope you return the favor by helping someone in need someday, just like I did. I will, sir, of course. I won't forget your generosity, sir. The car hit a major pothole and a bump, which lifted us in our seats for a second. This is unacceptable. We need to invest in infrastructure here. I agree, sir. We still need to drive back tomorrow, unless you use one of those new helicopters. The motorcade began approaching the hotel. The Hotel West was supposedly the best hotel in Narbel. The large 25-story main building was undoubtedly one of the taller and more expensive buildings in the city. It towered over the nearby slums and had been a target for protest when it was first built. A crowd was gathered in front of the hotel, which the welcoming committee at its center. As we approached the red carpet entrance, I could see the mayor of Narbel and his top aides. Sergei got out of the car and opened the door. He bowed his head respectfully and gestured towards the entrance. See you later, Sergei. Thank you, sir. Likewise. As soon as I left the vehicle, the fresh air of Narbel filled my lungs. Almost immediately, everyone present in the crowd flocked over to me with an excessive display of courtesy, smiles, and handshakes, while I donned the mask of a politician. A mask that I was very used to. Young Swords suspected of terror attack. At approximately 1646 on Monday, a terror attack occurred in the Vesort city center during a rally by the left-wing CPS. The attacker, suspected to be working with Young Swords or another organization connected to them, opened fire with an automatic rifle on the protesting civilians. 17 people were killed, including the attacker, who shot himself afterwards. Witnesses testified that the rifle was hidden behind a newsstand. Our local police are now wary of this tactic, and all newsstands will be inspected by the police before and during crowded rallies. Further investigations on Young Swords are underway. Franz Richter, leader of the PFJP, recently outlined their demands to the reform package. He declared that without the implementation of term limits and limited decrees, it would be very difficult for him and his party to stand behind the reform package. Okay, and then we have Narbel. Briefing on the current welfare situation. I arrived at the meeting room for my talk with Ciara and Pascal. Before beginning, I took a moment to appreciate the view from the balcony. The mountains of Narbel were completely covered with snow. While I was mesmerized by the scenery, Pascal Benawal walked up to me. My Minister of Health was ironically somewhat portly, having gained a few pounds since his breakthrough as a best-selling writer, but his authority on social affairs could not be questioned. Such a spectacular view. Sierra Walda, the Minister of Education, joined us on the balcony, dressed in a sky-blue pantsuit. Her preference for trousers overdresses had made her the subject of much palace gossip, but it didn't seem to bother her in the slightest. Spectacular indeed, but if you look in the opposite direction, you will see what Seoul's decades of neglect did to the city. Most of the people living in Narbel are workers, farmers, and their wives and children. They're breaking their backs for close to no pay, all thanks to greedy corporations. Can't really blame the companies, that's just how they work. Yes, we can. Similar companies are doing much better for their workers in United Cortana and Arcasia. If you look past the view, you can see the real problems. Real problems like poverty. Pascal nodded gravely. This was a subject he knew quite a bit about himself. His best-known books were about the plight of the Swordlands less fortunate, drawing from his own past growing up in squalor. Well put, Miss Walda. I don't need to tell you about my own experiences with poverty, and you've been through similar hardships yourself, Mr. President. We have all gone through difficult times. True, but some lives are more difficult than others, like ours was, and still is for hundreds of thousands in Swordland. You don't have to have been born to poor... You don't have to have been born poor to sympathize with the plights of the impoverished, much as you don't have to have been born a woman to recognize Swordland's need for parity among the sexes. You know, is this not the third minister in my cabinet that's female? I'm starting to wonder if there is really a problem with the sexes in this country. I mean, this is really what is this? It's early on. There should be a problem, right? But for being so early on, there sure are a lot of female ministers in my government. Parity among the sexes shouldn't be our first priority. Look at how many high-ranking female politicians our country has. Thank you, Pascal. Appearances can be deceiving, Pascal. Her voice sounds bitter. Think about how Lilias Graf got to her current position. I don't necessarily believe the rumors about her and Sol, but she never could have risen so high if she didn't parrot his cause. Gloria Tori, is it an accident that the first female assembly speaker is such a staunch conservative? What? I don't know where she's going with that. And then there was Alfonso's habit of promoting women to prominent positions to give Swordland a progressive sheen while accomplishing nothing in reality. Okay, well that's maybe where this has happened. While women in places like Narbel are denied any opportunity to advance, the government can use a handful of female politicians from wealthy families, myself included, to pretend their only obstacle to success is their own lack of initiative. Meanwhile, those of us who don't use our clout to help powerful men stay in power are denigrated as angry spinsters. I ask you, Mr. President, does anyone care that your strategist, Mr. Galad, doesn't have a wife? I've been wondering about that, actually. Alright, Sierra, you've made your point. As I was saying, isn't it about time Wholesword addressed this country's real issues rather than bowing to the wishes of the hawks and the fearmongers in the establishment and diverting yet more resources to the military and law enforcement? I don't know if you've noticed, but we have a serious problem with stability and law and order in this country, lady. Our welfare, healthcare, and education systems have been decaying since the recession. Swordland's poorer communities are losing hope. Hopelessness and lack of opportunities can drive people to extreme solutions. We're seeing increased crime, domestic violence, and yes, rising inequality between men and women. Those issues must be tackled from different directions. We need to engage it holistically. I'm planning to help by using an increased budget to improve the quality of healthcare. Everybody thinks that their budget is going to be increased. I'm sorry, but that's not how budgets work. That could prove useful, but we need to be doing a lot more education. There's another subject I want to mention. I have been working on improving the rights of workers in our country in a proposed draft bill that is currently being reviewed by our party. Mr. Clavin has already backed me and given his support. Swordland has fallen behind most countries on this subject, and it is my responsibility to ensure that this is not the case. There's always room for improvement, and it's good to hear you pushing for it. Appreciate the kind words, Mr. President. I will not let you down. It also is a matter of life and death. Every decade we hear of some horrific accident due to employers' disregard for their workers' safety. So will you back the bill when it arrives on your desk, Mr. President? Well, that depends on the bill, Pascal. To make a decision, I would need to evaluate the contents in detail. Understandable. You will receive all the sections in an outline. It's getting a little cold out here. Shall we continue our discussion indoors? We headed back inside. The meeting room was already prepared for state business. Small gifts for each of us had been placed on the table by the municipality. We took our seats. Well, let's start with the health overview, Pascal. As you wish, Mr. President, Swordland has a free healthcare system. Except for a few private hospitals operating under it, most of the populace receives adequate treatment. Health issues primarily appear in rural areas due to a lack of quality service. I'm doing my best to ensure that citizens of all ages receive the best health care they can. I also personally want to solve our high infant and maternal mortality problem. How many hospital beds are there per 10,000 citizens? There are 10 beds per 10,000 citizens. Compared to most of our neighbors, this is a very good number. It's actually a decent number, yes it is. Our amount of beds is higher than the countries of Agnolia, Wayland, but we obviously can't match Lesbia and Bogsland. Agnolia and Welland should hardly be used as standards, but it is good to know we aren't in a massive health crisis yet. What is life expectancy and mortality rates? Our life expectancy is 65 years. That is sort of low. The infant mortality rate is a worrying 121 per 1,000 births. 12%. While our maternal mortality is at 5%. Five percent of moms are dying and 12% of babies are dying. That doesn't sound good. I assure you that we're doing everything we can to save mothers and their newborns. Those numbers are saddening indeed. I expect nothing but your best efforts to improve the situation. We are working very hard on improving the quality of services. Thank you, Pascal. Your in-depth briefing is much appreciated. I want to hear about the education system. With pleasure. Swordist education is free, but we have a very outdated system that I want to reform. The other important issue is the lack of access to education in rural areas, especially for young girls. Your administration has the power to solve both problems. My highest priority is to get enough funding to be able to build schools in rural areas while I cleanse our educational system of its nationalistic indoctrination and sexist teachings. Tell me about the differences between urban and rural education. Urban areas have 3 times the number of schools per 10,000 people compared to rural areas. Rural areas also suffer from a lack of teachers. This screams backwards to me. Normally, rural areas have a better education. I can imagine teachers not preferring desolate areas. That's not a very good ratio. This is one of the most important problems we face, if not the most important. A huge part of the population is forgotten in terms of welfare. What is the literacy rate of Swordland? The literacy rate of Swordland is at 80%. That is a very good indicator for future growth, but it needs to increase. It's also far lower among girls than boys. If I remember correctly, the most illiterate areas are Bergia and England. That is correct, although Lacovin skews the statistics for the Nargis region, which also has a vast number of illiterate citizens. This underlines my point about the lack of access to education. Thank you, Ciara. I can fill in the blanks from here. I believe that is everything. What is it, Ciara? Look at this impoverished city. The streets full of potholes and the hospitals barely functioning. The school half open. This is not just about Sol or even Alfonso's failings. This decay in Swordland's forgotten regions has been going on for many decades due to structural corruption, which is fueled by capitalism. It's not fueled by capitalism. Damn it, woman, get that out of your head. Tarquin Sol did more for the country than any of us. Let's not get into an ideological debate. We need to focus on the issues. We are here to change the trend and provide for the people. Let's not get into an ideological debate. We need to focus on the issues. One cannot be separated from the other, Mr. Rain. The issues stem from the ideology. No, they don't. One way or another, we need to change in Swordland. Greed and unchecked capitalism will not magically provide for the people. Tell me more about your plans, Ciara. My plans require an increase in the government. You're not getting an increase in the government. I aim to solve the problem we highlighted with the allocated money. By building schools in these less fortunate rural areas and through fundamental changes to the education system, I will unlock the potential of all our children, boys and girls and alike. Well, Ciara, how about you take your current allocated funds and you start reallocating more of the funds to the places that need it and send less of the funds to the places that are doing okay. But you're not getting more. Improving the situation in rural areas is indeed a good idea. Interesting. I thought our problem was with the quality of education in Swordland as a whole. It's an investment in the future of Swordland. Imagine unlocking the full untapped potential of our youth, the knowledge and wealth they will generate. Wouldn't a promotion of private education help create additional funds? Yes, but at what cost? I'm not a supporter of the private sector in education. At the end of the day, they are focused on profit first. And there's your problem. What are you working on towards, Pascal? I personally want to improve the quality of healthcare in the rural areas, so I created draft plans to increase the salary of doctors and to upgrade the equipment of the hospitals. I can do more with an increased budget. Additionally, a privatization plan, here we go, to promote private investment in the healthcare system could allocate extra funds. I like your thinking. Isn't access to healthcare in rural areas an issue? Improving quality of healthcare in less fortunate areas should be our highest priority. Exactly. It would directly diminish our depressing high infant and maternal mortality situations. Besides, such a push would also have economic benefits. I do hope to create competition and increase the quality of healthcare with the privatization efforts. But you must realize that privatizing our healthcare system would increase the price of treatment and make access worse for the average citizen. No, Ciara, you must not realize that. That is your fantasy that you've created in your mind. The decision not to promote more state control would cost the Sordish people dearly. My expectations from our government is that we understand and focus on the needs of the people. Okay, we are elected representatives of our people, and we will prioritize their needs. There are other significant issues that we need to focus on. I appreciate your briefings and plans. We will reconvene at the budget meeting. One more thing, I wish to raise my concerns about your scheduled meeting with the GASM chairman and former president, Mr. Alfonso. Wait, I have a meeting with him? When did that happen? You could be concerned about it, but I didn't even know it was happening. By negotiating with Alfonso and his company, you have an opportunity to secure better labor conditions for blue-collar GASM employees. Doesn't sound like a bad idea. This could be a triumph for all of Narbel. What is there to negotiate, Pascal? The standards for GASM workers are already at rock bottom. President Rain can and must demand better. Nevertheless, it's worth acknowledging the corporation's significant contribution to job creation at Narbel and other poverty-stricken regions. Persuading the chairman to make a concession might prove to be a formidable task. My foremost priorities lie in improving the economy. Once that's achieved, upward mobility will naturally follow suit. What good is job creation if the workers are treated poorly? Of course I'll demand better from Alfonso. I know how slippery Alfonso can be. Bringing this up with him will indeed be a challenge. If we do this right, we can find a solution that advances both the economy and interests of labor. What good is job creation if the workers are treated poorly? Of course I'll demand better from Alfonso. I covered this topic extensively in one of my books, Confrontation. If not handled prudently, could exacerbate the challenges these workers face. This matter is close to my heart. I would personally be grateful if you are able to resolve the concerns raised by Katarina Horton and her fellow labor representatives. Katarina Horton is a Sordish labor leader, once again a female, politician and activist of Bloodish descent, member of the Assembly and current spokesperson of the Labor Union of Swordland. Born in Deer, Bergia, to a Sordish Bloodish family, Horton began her working life as a manual laborer before studying law at Holsword University. Okay. It would be difficult to imagine a CEO like Alfonso giving benefits to workers without him personally gaining from it. You are cynical, lady. Considering our need for greater energy security, we might find ourselves forced to collaborate with him. In this world, nothing is truly free. I wouldn't anticipate anything less. GASM relies on us just as we rely on them. We can find a path to compromise. GASM has profited from the labor of workers for far too long. It's time for them to give back. GASM relies on us just as we rely on them. We can find a path to compromise. The middle way often sways perilously close to the status quo. We must ensure that any negotiations genuinely benefit the people and not just uphold the interests of corporate giants. You know, I'm really hating the fact I wasn't able to choose my own ministers. What kind of country is this where me, the president, doesn't get to pick his own staff? Alright, anyway, thank you for your input, Sierra, but I will stress to President Rain how important it is that the door to dialogue remains open. Ideology should never get in the way of bringing about tangible, lasting change. I'm encouraged by the willingness of Mr. Manger and Mr. Alfonso to meet with me. It's a step forward. We shall keep you no longer. Thank you both for the discussion. I do hope we won't repeat the same mistakes again and again. Have a good day, Mr. President. As I made my way out, the weather was noticeably cold, but it didn't keep a group of USP supporters from coming out to cheer us on the streets. By looking at the citizens' attire, it was easy to understand the current state of Narbel. Some people were wearing clothes, a few sizes too large. Some kids did not even have shoes, yet there was hope in their eyes. They were excited to see their president in their city. Morbel mine disaster. A coal mine has collapsed in Morbel. Emergency response teams were dispatched immediately. Due to the sheer size of the disaster, additional manpower and supplies were requested from nearby cities. Initial investigations show that an underground fire has started due to the neglect in working situations by the Needham Mining Group. Current death toll is at 82 and counting. Holy reports. Okay, repeal of the Energy Protection Act of 1932 fails. Okay, so that's something I don't have to veto. The proposed repeal of the Energy Protection Act of 1932 was put to a vote. Wait, I might have wanted that actually. Was put to a vote in the Assembly today, resulting in its defeat despite strong advocacy from the reformer faction of PFJP and beyond, including within the USP under Albin Clavin. The majority of the Assembly, led by the USP and NFP, voted against the repeal 179 to 71. Consequently, the Energy Protection Act of 1932 remains in force, maintaining the status quo of foreign ownership restrictions of energy companies in Swordland. This result concludes the current attempt to modify the foreign ownership regulations, but does not preclude further legislative efforts or any initiatives by the executive. Kisaro Kibaner, leader of NFP, has announced today that the NFP is completely against any threshold reform. He specifically emphasized that this would lead to unwanted elements entering the Assembly, and that he is outright against any changes to the 10% threshold. The Workers' Rights Act of 1954, proposed by Albin Clavin and supported by Minister of Health Pascal Benawal, is being prepared for the first draft. Voices from the labor union showed strong signs of support. A session dedicated to the bill in the Assembly proved contentious. The people that form the backbone of the Swordish economy will finally be fully protected by extensive laws, Katarina Horton said, receiving both cheers and boos. The Stord Police Department has found a decapitated body in an abandoned house where the victim was later identified as Kurg Linky, a high school teacher and member of the local Young Swords Cultural Center. The victim was discovered to be tortured with hot iron rods before his tongue was cut off. Police suspect the Red Youth are responsible for the incident. The incident has not been made public. couple of reports off map. CSP leaders discuss Helgeland at Helm Summit. In a pivotal meeting convened in Helm, leaders of the CSP have gathered to discuss the intricate issues of Helgeland sovereignty, a matter tinged with historical complexity. The Assembly recalled the 1920s Agnolian annexation of the island during the Vogsland Revolution, underscoring their commitment to address past missteps and ensure a future that respects the rights and aspirations of the island's inhabitants. That's interesting. So, the island belonged to Vogsland, and Agnolia yanked it when Vogsland was going through a revolution? No wonder there's a problem with it. The summit was also a testament to the CSP's adept navigation in an ever-evolving geopolitical landscape marked by the capitalist influence of the ATO, emphasizing the importance of dialogue and cooperation. CSP leaders reiterated their determination to avoid escalation in an already delicate situation. Moreover, they confirmed the existence of prepared contingency plans, ensuring that Vogsland, a key member of the CSP, would receive unwavering support if the need arises. The summit concluded on a note of shared resolve with CSP leaders, collectively affirming their dedication to preserving peace and stability even amidst the challenging dynamics presented by the Helge Island issue. President Walker visited Lesbia last week to engage in talks with Prime Minister Alvarez concerning the establishment of an Arcasian military base within Lesbia. Following the conclusion of the discussion, an agreement was reached between the two leaders regarding a significant military defense investment in Lesbia. As part of the agreement, a large military base will be constructed on Ravnos Island. The base will be equipped with Arcasian radar and anti-air systems for enhanced security. Additionally, Arcasia plans to deploy a dozen M3 ballistic missiles. The base is expected to accommodate approximately 200 strategic bombers and jet fighters, along with an estimated 20,000 Arcasian soldiers. Okay, we got some reports. CPS and Lus strike again in Gazam. In Narbel, the Communist Party and the Labor Union of Sordland have organized a strike against Gazam. Prominent figures Katarina Horton of Lus and Denise Stahlher of the CPS have confirmed their participation. The impact of the strike on Gazam's operations and the wider political climate in Narbel remains to be seen. Labor strike at Gazam. Blue-collar workers at Gazam and Narbel have initiated a labor strike. The industrial action follows disagreements over wages, working conditions, and workers' rights. The strike has resulted in a temporary disruption to Gazam's operations. The duration of the strike and the potential impact on Narbel's local economy are currently uncertain. And what's in the news? Preserving national sovereignty, the EPA stands for now. Protests appear calmer. Nationwide protests persist, albeit with a slight reprieve in tension across some cities. Well, that's nice to hear. Education privatization proven successful. Our editorial team immediately analyzed the SIPA report recently revealed to assess the standards of education. We were curious to see how the policies of the last decade have begun changing the performance metrics. Lesbia specifically stood out with a jump of 6 positions forward to 5th out of 68 after a research analysis Collaborating with the vice president of Magnus Cartus and the SMEA chapter leader of OMEC, we gained critical insights to how Lesbia increased its education quality through privatization. Seoul needs to answer for its crimes. Shocking misogynist rally. Every day we are appalled by how deep the roots of misogyny goes in our country. We are appalled again when yesterday, during a protest by the Swedish League of Women, counter-protesters showed up to disrupt the peaceful rally. Labor Union Rights March. Okay. Meeting with Manger and Alfonso Gasson. This should be an interesting meeting. So, of my playthroughs before, this was not something that happened in the previous playthroughs, because this seems like it's extra content that's part of the whole creation of Rizia, like the Rizia gas stuff, and this Gassum company. They didn't even exist when I played this before, so this is new as well, so I'm kind of interested. Lucian and Peter were laboring tirelessly in the capital, uniting democratically leaning reformers for the crucial task of drafting a new constitution. Meanwhile, Gus Manger had invited me to visit the Gassum headquarters in Narbel. It was situated in Ornoble, a neighborhood on the city outskirts. Next to it was a Damanoy gas reserve, a prominent natural gas source consisting of 4 large fields. As our motorcade made its way through Ornoble district, I noted the neighborhood's state of disrepair. The roads were bumpy and marked with potholes, while the buildings surrounded us appeared run down and dilapidated. The community had apparently endured a prolonged period of neglect. We came to a halt at the entrance gates of the facility. A sizable mural depicting Gassum's logo has been painted on the nearby wall. Adjacent to the mural, a group of individuals wearing blue work vests had assembled, holding what looked like protest signs. Sergei skillfully parked the car, bringing our journey to a smooth and elegant conclusion. Gus greeted us warmly as we stepped out of the vehicle. Good day, President Rain. Welcome to Gassum's Narbel operations. I trust Minister Walda and Benawal didn't overwhelm you with their demands. Not exactly the most pleasant location for a meeting, is it? Sipping Bourne wine at the Jewel Beach Resort in Benfi would be better, yes. But you know, as someone who has never experienced the working class way of life, it is important for me to understand why my role holds such significance. Mr. President, I've been brainstorming a little something. The Grunai Rural Investment Plan? I reckon it's got the potential to breathe new life into our rural communities out in Grunai. I thought we already invested in Grunai. We could consider a few things. For starters, we could give the farming business a boost with some subsidies, or we could steer towards modernizing existing farms with machinery and tech. Or here's another thought. We could pour resources into developing crop breeds tailor-made for Grunai. Conditions of it works out, we could roll this out across Swordland. He kept talking as he guided me into the Gassum building. We're not in Grunai. We're Grunai's doing relatively okay. Why do we keep going back to Grunai here? Mr. President, I get the appeal of the Green Bill that's been making the rounds in the Assembly. But I'm telling you, if we put the brakes on that and funnel those funds into the Grenai plan instead, we could make some real strides without spooking any potential investors. It's a tough call, Gus. I need to weigh the environmental implications and the economic benefits. That's all I'm asking for, Mr. President. Just give this plan a fair shake. Our talk was interrupted by noise coming from outside the building. We looked out the nearest window. A sleek helicopter was cutting through the sky, sunlight glinting off its polished surface and descending towards us. On it was our next appointment, Ewald Alfonso, former president. Alfonso sure knows how to make an entrance. An extravagant show of wealth, isn't it? Hardly seems necessary. That's quite the show of power. Alfonso doesn't do things by halves, does he? An extravagant show of wealth, isn't it? Hardly seems necessary. It's Alfonso's style, Mr. President. He always enjoyed his toys. Before we meet him, I want to bring up one more piece of assembly business. This workers' rights bill. Look, I'm all for giving hard-working folks what they deserve, but isn't it a bit hasty to push this while we're still stuck in a recession? The way I see it, short-term wins might end up costing us big time in the long run. Gus, I get what you're saying, but isn't it time we put people's rights before profits? I see where you're coming from, Mr. President, but a prosperous economy helps everyone, the workers included. If we're all sinking, nobody wins. Please come this way. Ewald and I have some exciting news to share with you. I have faith that you won't leave us hanging. I'm here because something needs to be done about Narbel's living standards. Of course, that's going to play a big role in our discussion. We do have to be delicate with Gassam, though. A corporation this big is like a house of cards. You make one wrong move and the whole thing falls apart. We shouldn't act in a way that jeopardizes Gassam, but we should still do something. I highly advise us to find a middle ground. If the state can assist Gassam through these tough times, we'll all benefit. Shall we? Pushes open a door. We walk down yet another hallway, seemingly in the direction we just come from. Like a maze, isn't it? That's Quinali architecture for you. The hallways were lined with doors. Glass panels in them reveal workers in suits and ties, many of foreign origin, busy in their pristine offices. A stark contrast to the blue-collar workers outside working with machinery, transportation, and maintenance. Why are there so many workers from abroad? The best talent in Swordland were snatched by the SSC in the 1930s. Swedish State Corporation, founded in 1981, the Swedish State Government Corporation. Right. Most other corporations couldn't contend, so they had to look elsewhere. Here's the elevator. Ewald ought to be up there already. There's a separate entrance by the helipad. We stepped into the elevator, Gus punched a code, and we began our ascent. Let's do this. The door opened. Here we are. Ewald, my friend. Ewell Alfonso stood up from his chair. He had a perfectly tailored suit that he wore as casually as pajamas. Gus, you old devil. Takes one to know one. As promised, I've brought our guest of honor. President Rain, I hope you enjoyed seeing our facility here. President Alfonso, it's nice to see what you have built from the inside. It's fine, nothing compared to the Gassam headquarters in Hullsword, of course. Still one of the standouts of the Maroon District. Please have a seat, let's talk. We sat down, some snacks and drinks were served, multiple Gassam yearly financial reports were scattered on the table between us. President Rain, I'm here because we have a great opportunity on our hands. A business arrangement that will benefit Gassam, and Swordland alike. I also happen to believe that current and former president of Swordland should stick together and share our experiences. Not everyone has been in our shoes, you know. Presidents sticking together, that's an interesting notion. Indeed, it is an interesting notion, President Rain. It's a shame that politics often stands in the way. Could do with a bit more of that, couldn't we, former president, current presidents, all pulling together for Swordland? As we discuss the future of Swordland, it is paramount that I comprehend your vision. The trajectory you set for this country will inevitably impact not just Gassam, but also Swordland's position on the global stage. I confess I've been following the news from the Maroon Palace closely since leaving office. I am heartened that your economic interests seem to align with mine, even more so that you have chosen to align with the West. It's a path I myself considered while drafting my foreign policy. Now I hear that you are positive about the Kingdom of Rizzi investing in Gassam. Yes, I take it as an encouraging sign that foreign nation is interested in Swordish cooperation. You make a valid point, President Rain. The interests of foreign investors could indeed be seen as an endorsement of our potential for growth and competitiveness. However, I would caution that such interest is not a guarantee of our success. You know, gentlemen, this reminds me of a story from when I was just starting out. There was this young farmer in Grunai. Always Grunai with you, Gus. His father was a stubborn man, insisting on doing things the old way. But this young farmer, he had ideas. He wanted to modernize, to innovate. It was only when his father fell ill that he took over and transformed the farm. He took risks, made some mistakes, but ultimately he tripled their output in just a few years. Wait a minute, Gus. Is this story about you? Were you the young farmer? Well, I did grow up on a farm, but no, that wasn't me. I was too busy trying to turn apples into a viable fuel source. A failed experiment, but it made some damn good cider. As Gus finished his point, he suddenly heard the faint wailing of sirens in the distance. He waited for the noise to fade before continuing. Back to the topic at hand. It seems we are at a crossroads with Gassam. The numbers tell us a tale of struggle and potential. No need to sugarcoat it, Gus. Gassam is teetering on the edge of a cliff. Without significant restructuring, the firm risks plunging into insurmountable debt. My old friend Ewald reached out to me for assistance. Out of respect for our shared history and my small stake in the company, I couldn't refuse. I've always believed in the power of networking. I'm sure you've heard of Rusty Montoro, chairman and CEO of Rizian Royal Gold. Rusty and I go way back, and he's done quite well for himself. Back under Alfonso's government, I was able to broker a deal with King Ramos Torres thanks to my connections with Rusty. It was a win for all involved. I can assist you if you can return the favor by improving the situation in the city. One hand washes the other. Thanks to Gus, Rizian's connections, investors from the kingdom are now interested in Gassam, a development that could steer us clear of the looming crisis. We've got an amazing opportunity here. The demand for gas is steadily increasing from both international partners and the storage state. All we have to do is ensure a consistent supply. The trouble is that right now some of our fields are operating at only half of their capacity due to resource limitations, but we have significant potential for expansion, including 2 new fields that haven't even been tapped. Right now, some of our fields are operating at only half of their capacity due to resource limitations. What are those resource limitations? With the right amount of investment, we can expand resource extraction, effectively fulfill rising demands, and ensure long-term stability and profitability. But that requires us to be willing to take risks and weather the storm. Now that's a legacy worth striving for, wouldn't you agree? Possibly. I'm intrigued by the untapped fields. What's the potential return if we invest in these new areas? What's the risk, Mr. Alfonso? What if the investment doesn't pay off? Will the investment help keep Gassam from having to downsize its operation? I've seen enough corporate bailouts and handouts to know that it's always the big businesses that benefit while the common people are left to suffer. Is that the route I'm going to take? It might be. Hopefully it doesn't. I want to pick this just so that I can put a sharp blunt on this conversation saying, hey, if we're going to be bailing you out, you need to be doing something for the little guys. I'm not trying to stop this negotiation. I'm just trying to push it in my direction. Gassam is not just another corporation. It's an essential part of the energy infrastructure that powers our nation. The sound of sirens briefly distracted us. Through the window. We saw police cars driving down the street adjacent to the Gassam zone. We redirected our attention to the meeting. Ewald looked at me. Mr. Rain, the foundation for a robust partnership is right here. It's high time we shift our focus towards sealing this deal. If we raise a minority investment, it would allow us to invest in further resource excavation in the gas fields and turn the company back to significantly profitable. By significant, I mean that our projections show that Gassam would be able to cover 80% of Swordland's gas needs in 3 years, and we would achieve profits 4 times the value of our investment. If we invest in Gassum, I want to make sure that the company is also committed to improving the socio-economic conditions in Narbel. I wholeheartedly agree. The well-being of Narbel's citizens is a priority for Gassum. With this investment, we could certainly allocate some funds to improve the local infrastructure and create more jobs. Mr. President, I've been thinking, what if we tie Gassum's growth to Narbel's development? Get the company to invest in the community, that way everybody wins. Gus, I'm liking this. Mr. President, your administration's commitment to market economy aligns with our vision for competitive Gassum. With an energy investment, we can further liberalize the energy market, enhancing our technologies and compete globally. I'm heavily interested in the idea of Gassum investing in Narbel's development, but we need concrete action, not just words. You're right to demand specifics. With this investment, we aim to improve the living conditions in Narbel by creating more jobs, providing better housing for our workers, and initiating educational programs. Gassum is as committed to Narbel as it is Swordland. It's about time Narbel got a leg up. Ewell's plan sounds solid to me. More jobs, better living conditions, that's a step in the right direction. If the Swedish government chooses to invest, it would gain a voice in the broader company's decision, even as a minority stakeholder. The government could either liquidate its shares at a future date or continue to reap the long-term profits. Beneficial arrangement for all parties. Well, Mr. President, will Gassum and Swordland make history or not? Will co-invest with Rizia? Wait. Will co-invest with Rizia? Will share the cost and stakes? Yeah, we'll co-invest. A joint investment, a wise choice, and ensures steady funds for Gassum. I like the way you think, Mr. President. Sharing the cost with Rizia reduces our risk and strengthens our ties. It's a smart move. Before we dive into the celebration, I've allocated time during the meeting for President Rain to discuss any concerns regarding Gassum's treatment of its workers and its effects on Narbel. The labor union, along with the Communist Party of Swordland, has rallied substantial support for Gassum workers in Narbel, advocating for improved local conditions. Alfonso nodded and looked at me. Our duty is to listen and take action. That's the mandate granted to us by the public. While sometimes people may not always recognize what's in their best interest, do you have a proposal in mind, Mr. President? This is tough. Wages just straight up makes everything better, right? Honestly, I would prefer to make sure that the workers get better wages. However, that would only benefit the workers. It wouldn't benefit the rest of the community. Where if I went with, well, that's the workers of Gassam need better housing, access to healthcare, and opportunities for education. I expect Gassam to contribute significantly to local charities and aid in the city's recovery. Alright, healthcare, education, and industry, this one. Good point. I see the potential for Gassam to play a larger role in supporting our workers and their community. I will personally oversee initiatives to provide private housing, health, and education support for our blue-collar workers. That's reassuring to hear. I trust that you'll follow through on these commitments. Well, this is promising, Ewald. Ewald's commitment to these initiatives should alleviate some of our concerns. Well, Mr. President, we're committed to... Suddenly, the meeting was interrupted. The quiet murmur of a conversation from outside the room grew louder, followed by the sounds of hurried footsteps. A member of the private security team entered the room, his face taut with urgency. He approached Alfonso and leaned in to whisper something in his ear. Ewald nodded solemnly, his gaze meeting mine with a serious intensity. Gentlemen, it seems we have an unexpected situation outside. Some protesters from the labor union have blocked the main vehicular exit. Katerina Horton and Denise Stoller seem to be leading the group. It would be difficult to leave the way we came without causing trouble. Well, that's a pickle. What's our move, Old? Why don't we just march down there and tell these groups that their demands are going to be heard? I have a helicopter ready. We can leave undetected and avoid the chaos and potential danger. I think we should face the crowd head on. That is your prerogative, Mr. President. Following the violent events of late, I heavily recommend against facing any crowd. Mr. President, I advise you leave via helicopter just in case. I can stay back and update the crowd on the discussion today. Sergei Welkner rushed in. Mr. President, I have discussed the situation with the President's Guard and the police security. They are advising us not to go out the way we came in. More police are on the way. You must make a decision, Mr. President. Damn it, I'm gonna go address the crowd. Yeah, let's read the report. Bloodish Freedom Front under leadership. Security forces have gathered intel regarding a hidden meeting among local leaders of the separatist group Bloodish Freedom Front that occurred a few days ago. It is suspected that they have elected a new leader in the meeting, Alin Arj, who is the brother of the infamous former leader, Dulin Arj. This development could have serious implication for the national security, as Bloodish Freedom Front has been known to use violent means to achieve their goals. Yeah, I think most of that bloodish stuff could be fixed by, I don't know, letting Bloodish Freedom Front have a little more voice and maybe letting the guy out of jail that they tossed in jail. Just me. Decide on how to leave. Let's check the news. A word of caution. The co-investment in Gassam by Swordland and Rizia, though marketed as a strategic venture, necessitates caution. Cautious optimism due to Rizia's ties to Grace. The immediate financial benefits are apparent due to lesser costs for the Treasury, but the larger implications of allowing foreign influences into our energy sector remains murky. Now more than ever, it's critical to remain vigilant about our national interests. Okay, Risking sovereignty, the co-investment strategy in Gazprom with Rizia has not gone without scrutiny. Critics are voicing concerns over foreign influence on our energy sector and potential threat to Sorlin's economic autonomy. Critics urge the government to prioritize domestic solutions over international cooperation. Innovative co-investment boosts Gazprom, an unprecedented move. Sorlin and Rizia have embarked on co-investment strategy in Gazprom. The initiation of this cooperative approach heralds a promising boost to Gazprom's financial position and productivity. The move, heralded as an example of enlightened international economic cooperation, also marks a significant strengthening of diplomatic ties between two nations. Alright. Address the protesters and leave via car. Nobody's gonna call me a coward. Anything else? No? As we stepped out of the towering front gate of Gazprom facility, I immediately became aware of how tense the situation was. Gus Manger stood to my right, his silhouette barely distinguishable from the monolithic edifice behind us. Sergei stood to my left, his eyes scanning the crowd with the precision of a hawk. The Gazprom security had drawn their weapons in anticipation, forming a bristling wall around the perimeter. Mr. President, my presidential guard, in stark contrast, stood tall and unflinching at the entrance, shielding us from the sea of angry workers surrounding us. The shouts of the crowd were deafening, the hostility palpable. Stoller and Horton stood up at the forefront with fire in their eyes. With a deep breath, I prepared to address them. Gus extended a megaphone towards me. My fellow swords, we are here today not as adversaries, but as collaborators. Our purpose, to invest in Gazprom and to ensure it invests in you. We are not blind to your struggles. We seek to acknowledge them, address them, and above all, improve them. Speeches and more speeches from President Rain, but what exactly was decided today? We need more than petty words, we need substance. She's right, Mr. President, we need details. What's going to change for the workers? Now hold on a moment. President Rain is committed to bringing about real change. His actions and decisions demonstrated this clearly, even if it doesn't fit your narrative. Is that so, Manger? All we've seen are decisions that favor the likes of you and you, old Alfonso, not the common worker. It's not about narratives, Mr. Manger. It's about ensuring a fair, dignified life for the working class, something your policies have consistently failed to do. I understand your skepticism, Dennis, but I assure you my administration is devoted to bringing about better conditions for our workers. Your words are compelling, President Rain, but can they truly outweigh the years of corporate dominance? Your intentions sound noble, President Rain, but intentions alone don't feed families or pay bills. We need concrete action. Wasn't it your government that bailed out the elites while workers were left to suffer? Where was our bailout, Mr. President? It's clear from your lack of commitment to education that you don't fully comprehend the scope of challenges faced by our workers' families. Your neglect of our nation's healthcare system will harm millions. Mr. President, we demand that you support the upcoming Workers' Rights Bill. The labor force of Swordland will be watching your next move closely. Furthermore, we want reform. Reduce the election threshold and change the Constitution to make a more democratic and fairer nation. If I choose that, I don't want to give them hope in something that I'm really not going to be able to do. I can't increase the budget on healthcare and education. This is just word salad. This is this is how I feel. This is the truth of the matter, but I don't know as if it's what they want to hear. I don't think this is going to make them exactly back down. This is what I want to say because that's the truth of it. The business bailout was a necessary step, but they're not going to like that. I'm going to have to go with 5. We must recognize that our country can't solve all its problems at once. We are working hard and making progress, but our troubles won't simply vanish. Yeah, that's what I figured. I could feel the tension growing. The presence of our guards did little to reassure me. Suddenly, a reporter pushed through crowd, brandishing a microphone towards me. The locals of Narbel have suffered under the impact of Gassam for years. What concrete steps is Gassam going to take for the benefit of the local community? Thank you, Miss Reporter. As a result of our negotiations, Gassam has committed to improving the living conditions for the workers. This includes providing private housing, ensuring access to health care and education. I know it's hard to believe, but today was a victory. A change came over the crowd. The angry shouts were replaced with cries of disbelief and joy. Eventually, all fell silent as they waited for Dennis and Katerina to respond. If these promises materialize, it could mean a significant improvement in the lives of our comrades at Gassam. This is a start, albeit late. Let's hope it's not mere lip service. Private housing, healthcare, and education, that's indeed a shift from the status quo, Mr. President. While I commend this commitment to improve the lives of our GASM workers, we can only hope this is not just another political gambit. A group of figures emerged from the crowd, adorned in unmistakable scarlet attire. The Red Youth have arrived. Great. The sight of them transported me back to my days among the young swords, when face-offs with those clad in crimson were frequent. I realized this was no longer a mere protest, it was a symbol of a broader, more potent struggle. The police began reorganizing their ranks, adopting defensive postures. Could you shed some light on the possible deal between the Swordish government and Gassan? What role does the Kingdom of Rizia play in the arrangement? In a show of international cooperation, Swordland and Rizia will jointly invest in Gassan. A partnership with Rizia? You are aware of the monarchy's history of stamping out a disagreement with brute force? We will be watching this co-investment closely. Your government will be responsible for keeping its partner's worst tendencies in check. Nearby, a Gassam security officer and Presidential Guard member were conversing in hushed tones. I saw them glance over the crowd, now calmer but still restless. President Rain, while the crowd appears somewhat subdued, I would advise we exercise caution. It may be best to conclude your address and proceed to the vehicle. Are you sure won't running away from this only make the protesters angrier? I'll remain here, Mr. President. The crowd seems calmer now, and I believe I can answer their queries and maintain the peace. You should go. Mr. President, thank you for your willingness to address us. Let's continue these important conversations moving forward. You've shown courage today. We'll see if your actions match your words. Until next time. We have shown courage together. Now we will hold you accountable to your promises. The trouble of the laborers are not over, and neither is the work of our unions. Shake their hands. I reach out my hand to Katerina, shook it with a smile. Dennis followed suit. Almost immediately, the remaining tension in the crowd dissipated. A few workers nearby broke into scattered applause. The initially hesitant clapping grew louder and jubilant. Cheers and whistles filled the air. I saw the Red Youth members standing at the edge of the crowd with their arms folded, a hint of approval in their eyes. As I readied myself to leave, I turned back to Katerina and Dennis a last time. My job is to listen and act. As for accountability, it's that what all governments should be held to. You have my word. Let's all remember that we're here for the same reason, to better the lives of our citizens. Let's not allow our differences to blind us to our common goals. Can you clarify the current status of your personal relationship with Yule? No more questions, please. Mr. President, if you could please proceed to the vehicle. Sergei opened the door of the car, and I lowered myself into the seat. The door closed behind me with a thud, sealing off the external noise. The crowd began to disperse, and the individuals breaking away to let our convoy through. The guards took their positions, nonetheless forming a human barrier around the vehicle. The engine purred to life, and we began to move. I'm glad we are safely on our way, Mr. President. Sergey, in this role, danger comes with the territory, but your concern is appreciated. It's not just part of the job, sir. It's a matter of personal commitment. The echoing voices of the protesters gradually subsided as we retreated from the scene and left Narbel behind. Wow, that was really good. That was written really well. That felt intense. That was a great addition to the game. Yeah, I'm really impressed with what we just transpired. What just transpired there. It makes me feel. It gives me the feels. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're little. Kind of feeling like a hero. Kind of feeling like you made a difference inside of a video game. Anyway, what's next? News. Gassum's blue-collar support, a win for traditional values. In a step that upholds the dignity of hard-working Swedish citizens, Gassum has committed to providing private housing, health, and educational support for blue-collar workers. In the face of the economic challenges these workers face daily, this commitment sends a clear message. Hard work does not go unnoticed in our society. These workers, often overlooked, are the backbone of our nation. This move by Gassum will not only improve their standards of living, but also boost morale and productivity within the company. Tone deaf. President addresses misses the mark? What is this? In what was supposed to be a crucial address to the workers of Gassum and the people of Narbel, President Anton Rain appeared to be tone deaf to their needs and concerns. Despite the urgent need for leadership and direction, the president's address was notably lacking in empathetic and understanding and effective solutions. This underscores the disconnect between the presidential office and the plight of the common worker. Wow, that's a very different headline. A beacon of hope. President Anton Rain's recent address at the Gassum Gates in Narbel has been met with an overwhelmingly positive response from the crowd. The president articulate delivery and compelling arguments serve to rekindle faith in the Swedish government, shedding a ray of hope on the current challenges plaguing our nation. His inspiring speech seemed to resonate with the working class, leaving an atmosphere of optimism and unity in its wake. Gassum workers' welfare takes a leap forward. In a recent breakthrough, President Anton Rain secured a commitment from Gassum to provide housing, health, and education and support to their hard-working blue-collar employees. This is an undeniable triumph for workers' rights, and significantly it has been catalyzed by the robust advocacy of the Labor Union of Swordland and the Communist Party of Swordland. In these challenging economic times, this assistance considerably improved the quality of life for these workers and their families. We hope to see other major companies in Swordland follow suit in the near future. A triumph for worker activism. In a hard-fought victory for workers, Gassum has agreed to extend housing, health, and education support to their blue-collar workforce. This significant development won primarily through the relentless struggles of the Labor Union of Swordland and the Communist Party of Swordland marks the role of President Rain, while instrumental in the negotiation process, pales in comparison to the blood, sweat, and tears of our workers. I like how the Labor Union of Swordland and the Communist Party of Swordland are getting the lion's share of the credit for what I just did. Oh well. Such is the way of being president, I suppose. Stability Order of 1954, an order to stop the operations of destabilizing youth organizations. Oh, Jesus Christ, here we go. If things are currently moving in the right direction and people are currently settling down, do we want to stir the pot by... Well, let's find out. An investigation on the influence of the Young Swords and Red Youth organizations on the post-assassination unrest has concluded. Both organizations haven't officially organized or called for illegal action, but several low to mid-level leaders from both have links to insightful actions that led to deaths, injuries, and instability. This allows us to ban the organizations. I'm sorry, but do we not learn anything? You censor and ban. You only push the speech underground. Instead of having it in the daylight and in the public square where people can debate and shine sunshine on good and bad ideas, you push it underground where that debate doesn't happen. Not banning it. Okay. Let's go a little further here. Brunei Regeneration and Ecological Economic Nurturing Act and finalization of the drafted constitutional changes. I'll be honest, the drafted constitutional changes, the changes to the Constitution, I have no intention of actually accomplishing that, because if I accomplish that, I end up getting impeached, and everything goes to hell, and I end up in a jail or something. Yeah, it's I can't do it. However, I'm going to try to do as much good as I can in the country without doing that. Okay, Brunei Regeneration and Ecological Economic Nurturing Act. Brander Assembly Brunei Regeneration Ecological Economic Nurturing Act. The green has been proposed by the Assembly, aiming to encourage a more sustainable approach to industry in Brunei. Section 1 of this act would impose stricter regulations on industrial pollution, waste disposal, particularly in the Brunei region. Businesses not complying with these new standards may face hefty fines, the revenue from which would be invested back into environmental recovery projects. Section 2 proposes to offer tax breaks to businesses that can demonstrate a significant reduction in their environmental impact over a period of time. A small investment is created for eco-friendly business practices. I'm not convinced. I don't think hampering these businesses with further regulations at this point in time is going to help us. Plus, it's a government budget I can't afford. I did veto it, right? Didn't we have more than one government project? Oh, I just spent one for the for what I just did in with the gas. Okay. Green Act vetoed, a pragmatic move. President Antarin's veto of the Green Act has elicited positive responses. The president's decision reflects a pragmatic approach, recognizing that while environmental conservation is important, it should not come at the cost of economic stability. This sends a clear message about the need for a balanced approach to our nation's development, one that weighs economic realities against environmental imperatives. Okay, well that's what Whole Sword says. What does Radical say? Veto on Green Bill, a misstep for Swordland. President Rain's decision to veto the Green Act has been met with widespread disappointment. In the face of mounting environmental challenges, the act represented a much-needed transition towards sustained industry practices. It sought to address industrial pollution through stricter regulation and incentivize systems to encourage eco-friendly practices. The veto is not only a blow to Brunei, but to the nation as a whole, hindering our progress towards a sustainable future. This move raises concerns about the government's commitment to environmental responsibility. Okay. I was walking to my office since today was the day to edit and make the final changes to the proposal to change the Constitution of Swordland. The Reform Committee finally bore tangible results, and the draft of the changes were about to be presented to me. I walked to the marble corridor of the palace, thinking about the huge decisions I was going to make. At the entrance to my office, my secretary, Livia, greeted me. "Good morning, Mr. President." "Good morning, Livia. How are you today, sir?" About to make stressful decisions, so not feeling that great. Sorry to hear. She paused before taking my coat. It looked like she had something on her mind. "Mr. Rain, can you give me a hint about your reform plans? If you ask me, taking away the judge's immunity is long overdue, but it might anger a lot of people in these halls." Nothing's been decided yet. I hope you'll keep me informed. I'll take your coat now. So that was partially dictated by also knowing something I shouldn't already know. My secretary is a spy, and she was purposely trying to get information. So I didn't give her any. Okay, so not long after Peter, Lucian, and Anaya arrived. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning. Time to finally get this proposal going. Peter placed the draft in front of me. After your modifications, we will be starting the process. Can we go over each of the points that are in the discussion for the draft? Well, apart from the first two sections of decreasing the Supreme Court's authority and limiting the presidential's veto, nothing else has been agreed on unanimously. We could start talking about Section 3, and this is about the impeachment process of the president. Currently, in cases of high treason and breaking the Constitution, the Supreme Court may impeach and try the president. Most reformists want the impeachment to be initiated by the Assembly. They think they do not have any power over potential rogue presidents that would abuse their power. Not sure if it is correct to chastise the president this much, though. The Assembly should have oversight over the president. This law is particularly dangerous for you in this case. We will be going against the old guard, and if we prove to be successful in the Assembly, they will be looking for anything they can declare unconstitutional to tackle you. All they need is the Supreme Court to impeach you. What if we don't succeed? The court can have me impeached for this? Yes, they are already trying to hit you since they are aware about the current wind of change, but we aim to cooperate with some of the judges to make sure that doesn't happen. We will make sure the old guard won't control the court any longer, Mr. President. This is regarding the appointment of ministers. Currently, the President is free to appoint anyone from the members of the Assembly, and nobody else is involved with the process. There's definitely a demand to involve the Assembly in the process. Currently, the President is free to appoint anyone from the members of the Assembly. I am? Why didn't that happen? Okay, that's going a bit too far. Maybe, but Mr. Richter doesn't think so. Mr. Clavin in our party reformist wing has no problem with the current law. I'm sure PFJP can be persuaded too. If the entire package is to their liking, I don't think Franz will resist his own. He wouldn't say no to such major changes just because of a few small details. The fifth section is about our infamous electoral threshold. Most reformists want to lower the threshold as much as possible. Mr. Richter and his PFJP definitely want to see change on this topic. They find our 10% threshold to be anti-democratic, which is something I also agree with. Yes, but this is a delicate matter. The party, and I mean not even Albin, wants to change the threshold. They think that this would destroy our party in the long term. Not wrong. The 10% threshold is that which allows us to control half the assembly with around 1/3 of the majority in the election. But the high threshold is the reason why Swedish politics has become so isolated. You're right, even after Saul's resignation, we still have 3 parties in the assembly. Even Mr. Keebner's MFP was barely elected. Don't forget that the Communist Party and the Workers' Party of Bloodia both had close to 10% vote in the last election. You would be opening their way into the parliament, and in the future, if you were to decrease the threshold, it's important that you realize this. Of course, that would also mean the USP might lose its majority in the assembly, sir. If our own democracy is the reason of our downfall, we will have to accept it. I agree with you, Mr. President. Lucian continues with the next section. Section 6, this is about the presidential decree. Reformists demand more limitations to the president's executive power. Mr. Richter has demanded them to be completely removed. I have suggested to bring some limitations to decrees regarding their applicability. While now we keep them, we should try to make sure that they will only be used in emergency situations. We could also make it dependent on an enabling act from the assembly. Sure, it would make the whole process longer, but as long as we have a majority, nothing really changes. I don't think the decrees need any reforms. Me neither. I think it's important that the president can act quickly on matters of national importance. Next one, Section 7, term limits. Uh-oh. Yes, Tarquin Saul governed for 20 years. It seems his magic is slowly vanishing from the minds of people, for they believe term limits are necessary. We can't allow somebody like Saul holding on to his seat for 2 decades again. We should establish limits. Hey, if people keep electing one person, that means they really are content. The masses are scared of change. Even Saul knew he had to leave, but we will leave it to the president to decide. I will take my time and seriously consider the options before settling on one. Now I'll move on to the 8th section. We are reaching the end. It's the question about the immunity of judges. While the anti-old guard sentiment is increasing, they are talking that taking away their immunity would give us authority over judiciary. I do not support taking away their power for yourself, Mr. President. The judiciary must be independent and long-lasting. While I agree that the current court members are problematic, this is no way to resolve it. The law is supposed to ensure the judiciary's independence by giving legal protection so they can't be pressured. Well, they need absolute immunity in theory, but look at what reality got us. We've got to deal with the most corrupt Chief Justice in the world, with no chance to deal with him. We should respect their immunity. That might be the best thing to do for now. If we agitate the court further, we might lose our chance with Miss Edmonds as well. And the last one is the question about Saul's legacy. Basically, he's a member of honor. It gave him absolute immunity even when he retired. He is a permanent member of the Assembly as well, but luckily he doesn't really attend anymore. According to the Constitution, the member of honor not only has legal immunity, but the state also covers most of their expenses. as well as providing security at all times. It can only be given to someone by an absolute majority vote in the Assembly and the approval of the President. That's why only Tarquin Sol has the title. He gave it to himself right after his military coup. This law is basically made to save the colonel, and it has a symbolic importance for Swordland because of it. We must get rid of this senseless law that protects him. He should be able to face justice for the atrocities that had taken place during his rule. No, the guy is eventually going to die, and that law is not going to be applicable to anymore. It's not important. Every president should gain that title after their turn. I'm sorry, Mr. President? After pushing aggressive changes, I may need the same immunity. Well, regardless of what Mr. Rain decides, we will need to work together to push this agenda. Let's start working on the draft. I thank you all for your input. Okay, constitutional changes. Section 1. Limit vetoes. Huh? What if I don't want to remove the Supreme Court's voting rights? Damn it. Okay, President, Assembly, and Supreme Court may impeach with the majority in both. The President may not be impeached. Appointment of ministers. Oh wait, was there a scroll down for these other ones? No. I'm going to decrease the threshold to 8%. According to Article 18 and 51, President is able to issue decrees on political, social, and economic issues that would carry the force of law. They could not contradict the Constitution and are subject to judicial review. Do not change. Fine, 2 terms is fine. Every president. Yep. Looks like the amendments are ready to be proposed. But I have to say this too. The new electoral threshold will be really difficult for the party to accept. Our guys are not fond of that idea. Not reforming the minister's laws will also be frowned upon by the party. The assembly members have insisted on getting involved in the process. That's true. It'll be tough to get all their support. Some of our members may try to openly fight against this. We'll figure it out. I will say that I do not agree with the change to the Member of Honor law. I see that you're trying hard to get immunity and save your skin after your term, Mr. President. You know it, Naya. The law should have been abolished. It was made to protect Saul, and now you're trying to give this to every president? This conflicts with our idea of a democratic reform, sir. You're reading too much into it, Miss Morgana. Well, I think we can proceed now. I will personally work on the wording of this proposal with my hand-picked legal experts. With Miss Morgana's reputation as the most experienced attorney, this proposal will be bulletproof. Chief Justice Orso will have a hard time convincing others to oppose it. In the meantime, you must introduce this proposal to our party. You will need to get them to back us if we want it to pass the assembly. I don't really. Sir, I advise you to first talk to the leaders of both conservative and reformist wings of the party. As far as I'm aware, Mr. Clavin supports the reforms already. Miss Tory will be a real problem. She became the real heavyweight after we left for the executive. I'll handle them. Of course. Don't show any weakness, sir, and be prepared to reconsider the proposal if it comes to that. Understood. Wish you good luck with the party, sir. I think we can end the meeting here. Alright, what's this? Current proposal. Richter's victory over Rain. Our sources informed us that the plan is underway by the government to start drafting the reform package. The Rain administration has reached out to the PFJP led by Franz Richter despite his history of criticizing and opposing the USP, even calling Rain yet another pawn that was put forward as the candidate during the campaign election 1953. It is the first time in a USP government that a president is cornered to work with his unapologetic rivals to this extent. If anything significant can come out of this collaboration is yet to be seen. If the USP isn't capable of showing strength, yada 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 yada. Okay. Unleashing energy, an analysis of EPA's potential. Recent data-driven forecast from our economic analysts indicate that repealing the Energy Protection Act could unlock a new era of robust growth in Swordland. A thorough examination of market trends underscores the tremendous potential. Blah 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 blah. Okay. Preparation underway for the annual Benfi Festival. Okay, that's nice. Dinner with the business council members. Oh, I get to bribed some more. We were in Lochhaven to work with the Business Council to assess weaknesses in the economy. Simon organized a dinner with the affluent economic figureheads of Swordland. When we arrived, the streets were bustling with activity, even though the atmosphere in the country was tense. Lochhaveners didn't seem to be very worried. Together with Walter Tusk, Edith Agneck, Mikhail Avon, and Simon Hall, we entered the renowned Asteria restaurant by the coast. A short blonde man whose embroidered pocket read "Manager" greeted us and waved his arms in excitement as he told us how pleased he was to have us in his establishment. Okay. Beaming with pride, he led us to a private room and got us seated at a large table, covered for the occasion with a maroon tablecloth. We were quickly served by a group of servers. Walter spoke as they started taking our orders. I recommend the Lochavan salmon, President. You have to taste this local delicacy here, the best in Swordland. Order the salmon. The servers took their notes and asked about the second dish. Order rice, order salad. The server placed glass in front of each of us and served bread and water. After that, they were done taking orders. They quickly left us alone in the private room. Mr. President, I didn't have the possibility to thank you for coming today. Your presence means a great deal. Indeed, sir. It's an honor to dine with you. It's great to be here with the members of the Business Council. We should thank Simon for organizing this meeting. No need for that. I hope everybody enjoys the evening. Simon gestured at the expensive-looking red wine that one of the servers had just brought to the table. Mr. President? No, thank you. Are you serious, Mr. Rain? Are you going to pass on a Chateau de Flamenco 1934? Thank you, but I'm not going to drink this evening. I have to insist. Fine, I can't turn down a man like you, Mr. Tusk. Well said, President. Simon poured some wine in my glass and waited for me to taste it before filling it up. I took a sip. It was bitter. Honestly, it tasted like any other wine. How is it? Is the taste to your liking? It tastes like any other wine. What? This wine doesn't even need testing. Should I fill your glass, or would you want another drink, sir? It's okay, Alan. I think I'm good. I won't have anything for now. As you wish, Mr. President. He grabbed the bottle again to pour some in Walter Tusk's glass. You didn't have to serve us, Mr. Hall. There are servers around here. After filling everybody's glasses, Simon stood up and raised his glass. I'd like to raise a toast to all of you here today. We're meeting here tonight in difficult times, but I believe that with hard work, cooperation, and trust, we will get through this period as well. I'd like to thank Mr. Rain again for his decisiveness when it comes to economic policies. I'm sure we will stop this recession. And also thank Mr. Tusk for being here with us today. His presence is an honor. And of course my colleagues from the Business Council, Mr. Agnick and Mr. Avon. Without you, none of these would have been possible. Let's drink to the future cooperation and growth for a prosperous Swordland. Everybody raised their glass and toasted each other. After a couple more minutes, the servers arrived with their meals. The food tasted amazing. Walter was right. This place must have been the best place in all of Lochavan. So, how did you find the food of the best fine dining restaurant in Lochavan, Mr. President? This can't get old. It's an experience. The chef must be tipped. Definitely it doesn't, but I will take care of the tip. Don't you worry. Always generous when it comes to small things. Tipping is no small thing. I actually don't like giving tips. People have salaries for a reason. But anyway, how are things going in the Maroon Palace? The pressure must have increased after you attended that funeral. The pressure was already high, not much has changed. You will get through this. As we conversed with Mikhail, I heard Walter raise his voice in an apparent argument with Edith and Simon. We both stopped to listen. Arcadia knows the right way of doing business. Their approach to the world is real and raw. I'd prefer that cutthroat approach in comparison to the niceties. Well, I mean, it's a nice country to visit, too. I've traveled there often business trips. Their attitude on all countries are nice to visit, if you have the cash. I'm just going to stay silent. It certainly depends on what you're looking for. Cultural tourism doesn't require a fancy hotel, says Mikhail. Mr. Tuss says, last time I went somewhere for that sort of thing was at university, and even then we had our wild times thanks to Conrad's connected entourage. Also, Walter is taking us down a rabbit hole again. By the way, I saw that underhaul construction has already started with the highway construction. Hopefully that project will bring new investment from Agnolia. The mood is already becoming positive. The relief package was also a great investment. It has already saved many businesses from declaring bankruptcy. I have to congratulate Mr. Rain for such major projects. No need for that, Mr. Avon. The state is just doing its job. Of course. Mr. Hull also deserves credit, of course, our great economy minister. Is there a joke coming? Why, I thought you said you were great at economy. He laughed. I've heard that you've bought a new villa, Simon. I don't comment on rumors, but I'll make an exception. Since we are among friends, it's true. Where is the property? It is a small seaside villa at the outskirts of Conriat. It's just a modest house with a swimming pool and small golf course in the property. Just a modest house with a golf course, huh? Modest? Are you being sarcastic with me? No, is there a problem? Oh, come on, leave the man be, President. Edith, who was sitting to my left, gently put her hand on my arm for a few seconds. Come on, let's not talk about finance or politics for now. We came here to relax. She turned to Walter and Simon. Isn't that right, gentlemen? They nodded at her and took a sip from their drink. She slightly leaned towards me. So, Mr. Rain, why don't you tell us what's behind that strong character of yours? I've heard that you had a difficult life in Deer. Is that right? My family cared for me as much as they could. I couldn't ask for more than that. That's very humble of you. I never met your family, Mr. President. How are they doing, if you don't mind me asking? They're doing great. We have no problems. That's great to hear. Your son must be very proud of you. Family is everything. My advice would be to make sure that Frank has a solid relationship with you. He is your future, after all. I'm trying my best to be a good father to him. He seems to be somewhat introverted. Wish that was my son's biggest problem. Darren seemed to be doing fine. I saw that his yacht party in Benfi made the local news. While the rascal didn't even ask for permission to use the yacht and just took it, he basically stole it. Good news is that I finally convinced him to go to university. He will study economics and lock him in business school. That's a good choice. Having a degree in Swordland separates you from the rabble, and we especially need more people who understand economics. Maybe your son will be a great future economist. I wouldn't count on that. But I agree that we need more economists to enter politics. Thankfully, we have a president who seems to be as well versed in economics as Alfonso. He turned to me. I'm very confident in your abilities to fix our recession. Thank you. I hope we can repair the damage to our economy. We can't fail like Alfonso did. A correction, it wasn't his policies that destroyed him, it was the old guard. Of course it was. They are a big threat. He threatened their economic power base over the country through vast privatization plans. They removed him and backed you after. Walter, stop with the conspiracy theories. I think we've had enough drinks. Everyone went quiet. But Walter's right. And we were finally talking about something I wanted to talk about. That's one good-looking bottle. The waitress brought one of the finest Arcasian whiskeys. It was time for a toast. Well, I suppose I have to do a toast, huh? Sure. I stood up to give a toast. To an equal society without class differences. I don't exactly agree with that. To a better society where people can strive to better themselves. To our wealth and success. Now, to a constructive and beneficial future. To raise our health and happiness. To a constructive and beneficial future. May our differences be set aside for a good future. They say hope dies last to the future. Raised. I think it's time we call it a night. Edith stood up. Most of us were all a little tipsy at this point. I want to thank you, Mr. President, for joining us, and you, Simon, for putting all this together. Thank you all for being here. It was great. Thank you. Thank you for being here. After bidding our farewells, we slowly walked out of the restaurant. The moon was shining bright, as everyone except Walter left in their luxury cars. I was waiting for something. President, a moment alone, please. He called me inside the small VIP lounge. I followed him inside. Usually, the Lotharberg spokesman doesn't directly comment on the administration, but I'd like to say a few things since this was a special evening. I'm all ears. Finally, a president that listens to the people. It won't be easy to pass the new Constitution through the Assembly and the Supreme Court. We could help you get it through if you in return help us with a few economic requests. Walter lit his cigar and took a few drags before continuing. The consensus is that we see eye to eye in the economic directions you've taken by promoting a market economy. Good to know, but not sure how this concerns me. Oh, it definitely should, President. He looked me in the eye. You rejected our previous discreet offer to pick Underhill Construction for the execution of the first mega infrastructure project. Yes, I rejected your bribe, but I still picked Underhill Construction, remind you. However, you still made the right choice. Your party not getting that donation is unfortunate, though. Why someone wouldn't want the money is beyond me. We are aware of the upcoming tax meeting, and it would be a step in the right direction if private corporations would get a tax cut. To boost the economy with job creation, of course, and the positive side effect would be our support to the administration throughout the entire term. I will make tax decisions objectively. Can't promise you anything. Oh, let's not be hasty. The recession will end if Lothberg is on your side, President. Why can't we all just be friends? Maybe we can. I'll see what I can do. Wait, did I just agree? Excellent. Glad to hear this. The group wants a private corporation tax cut and privatization in healthcare and education. Private corporation tax cut and privatization in healthcare and education. I actually like that idea. I will give a private corporation tax cut and enable privatization in health and education. I'm very satisfied to hear this. To us and the prosperous future of Swordland. He smiled. It is assuring to know that we are allies. Glad we could come to an agreement, Walter. It's assuring to know that we are allies. Now, could you kill a Supreme Court justice for me? See you, President. Walter laughed and Sergei came to pick me up. Entered the car. I entered the car and we drove to our residence in Lagavulin. Sergei took the seaside route. Car bomb attack in Avery. A car parked in the Agno-Sordish dominant neighborhood in the outskirts of Avery has exploded. Okay. School poisoning connected to bloodish women. Vilmer Asu, who was working at the school kitchen, was apprehended with connections to the last week's school cafeteria poisoning in Riville. The act was found to be politically motivated as the perpetrators are connected to the banned Bloodish Freedom Party. Asir is suspected to have been an active member since the start of this year. Read the report. Vice President Bechtern reported that along with Lucy and Glad, the committee had started working on the written aspect of the package as per the needs outlined previously. They will soon get the legal team involved to complete the writing process. The needed 150 signatures for the proposal has started to be collected within the USP. Bill on Rights of Workers being drafted. President meets with Business Council, which later continued with a dinner in a 5-star Mysteria restaurant with leading figures. The agenda of the meeting was not disclosed, and the contents of the meeting remain a secret, but it can be expected that President Rain has discussed the future economic plans of his administration. Morbell mine disaster, 112 dead. Lockabin League of Women march. Hundreds of women organized by the Swedish League of Women marched, etc. What's this? The call for equality were drowned by a loud group of conservatives. The protests were a clear reflection of the division that surrounds the country. It also raised the question if the First Lady Monica Rain's agenda to raise awareness and trigger change on the issue will bear fruit. Meeting on the Energy Protection Act of 1932. I thought they already tried to get that repealed, and it failed. Why are we talking about it now? As the morning sun streamed through the window of the president's office, an imminent meeting loomed on my agenda. In a quarter of an hour, I was set to discuss the Energy Protection Act of 1932 with Minister Graffel and Whiskey. The recent abrogation in the Grand National Assembly, coupled with our ongoing dialogue with Gassam, has only served to amplify the discourse surrounding the legislation. I was sipping my morning coffee and enjoyed a quiet moment of solitude when David arrived characteristically early. A very good morning to you, Mr. President. I trust I'm not imposing by arriving ahead of schedule. Not at all, David. On the contrary, we've now got an extra few minutes to strategize before the meeting, or given the serious topic we're addressing, an early start might be just what we need, or a gesture towards the seat. Not at all, David. On the contrary, we've now got an extra minute to strategize before the meeting. I'm relieved to hear that, Anton. I depart earlier for my appointments nowadays, as the stairs of the Capitol have become more of a challenge than I would like to admit. It's nothing to be ashamed of, David. Would you like some coffee or tea? I've already had my tea today. As per my doctor's advice, she suggests chamomile in the morning and sage tea in the evening for optimal health. Listening to the doctor does bring me some comfort. It feels as though my throat has been refreshed thanks to her. His gaze drifted, locking onto something beyond the window. A colossal zeppelin traversed the sky above the Maroon district. For a fleeting moment, it blotted out the sun before gently veering to the left, letting light flood the office once more. I still remember the first airship in Swordland. We purchased them from the Quenelle after the war, during the birth of what Sol called the Second Republic. Our infrastructure lay in ruins, and those zeppelins offered a much-needed lifeline, a chance to traverse and rebuild. And then, thanks to our research council's diligent efforts, we started manufacturing our own in Gelsord. Do you think we might have leaned too heavily on zeppelins for our transportation needs? Perhaps we should have invested more in rebuilding our roads and railways? At the time, the destroyed roads and bridges and all made air travel the most suitable option, but now I'm glad that your presidency is focusing on building up our infrastructure. Our reliance on others was temporary, a stepping stone towards the self-sufficiency we achieved with the national autarky plan. Even though it had downsides, I still consider it a success. A pause fell over the room. David's gaze landed on a portrait of Tarquin Sol hanging in the presidential office. His eyes lingered on the stern face of the old leader. A sigh escaped his lips. Now, when I think of the EPA, my mind is carried back to the formative years of the post-Civil War. Whole sword in the 1930s, the debates, the passion, the potential for transformation. It was a time of renewed optimism. It is our duty now to learn from the past and strive for a better future. What applied back then won't apply to now. I can see why the Energy Protection Act was so crucial at the time. We had to safeguard our energy sector from foreign interference, especially in the context of the post-Civil War economic situation. Yes, the EPA helped ensure that the sector remained under our control, limiting the extent of ownership of foreign powers such as Rumsberg or Lesbia. Despite the controversies, it was crucial to our recovery and has helped us maintain our energy independence to this day. I did not agree with all of the measures enacted by the technocratic government of that era, but some were undeniably effective. In the end, it took a collective effort to reassemble our nation's fragmented pieces. I'm sure you remember those dark days yourself. You crossed paths with Herman Ep.4 at Whole Sword State University, didn't you? He was a mentor to many. I recall our discussion about the future at the cabaret in Lockhaven with him and Heron Garacki. Isn't that other judge? Those were formative years for me. Ekwa and Garacki made an indelible mark on my outlook. It's interesting how those academic days shape our perspective, isn't it? It's interesting how I'm sure at least some of my wrinkles today were a direct result of my non-stop debates with them. David turned towards the large framed portrait of his father, Artur Sinaco whiskey hanging on the wall, painted with rich, warm hues. It captured the first president of Swordland in his prime. A spark of determination gleamed in his eye, and his mouth was set in a gentle, firm smile, a reflection of his belief in a better future for the country. Your father's legacy still looms large. Has it influenced your own views? My father was a visionary, a man who sought to modernize Swordland in a secular, democratic republic. I've always been guided by his principles. His ability to mobilize public support for revolutionary change has been a constant inspiration to me. He looked back at the portrait with a mix of pride and sadness. In a way, Tarquin Sol did carry on my father's legacy under his leadership. We transitioned from a military government to a civilian one, and experienced our first multi-party elections. But over time, he drifted away from the ideals of reform and progress that my father held so dear. His visionary zeal succumbed to the more pragmatic, more conservative, and sometimes even regressive dictates of political survival. Still, one must credit Tarquin Sol for extricating our nation from the ashes. No one can deny Sol's contribution. His leadership was instrumental in rebuilding Swordland. Alfonso, for all his flaws, did seek to set the nation back on a path of progress with his focus on a free market and economic liberalization. His EPA amendments, for example, were a severe departure from Seoul's national autarky plan, but many praised the way that it opened the door for unprecedented foreign investment in our energy economy. Do you think the EPA still holds relevance today, or should we consider a complete overhaul? The EPA has its roots in a different era. While some of its principles may still hold, we must not shy away from revising it in light of our current needs and challenges. Just as the conversation hit a pause, the door swung open and the other ministers arrived. Simon Hall entered first with a confident stride. Good morning, Mr. President. David, I trust the discussion is progressing well. Lilias followed closely behind. She walked in with an air of calm authority, her gaze sweeping across the room. Gentlemen, I hope I'm not interrupting anything crucial. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you all here. We have some important discussions on the agenda today, particularly concerning the EPA Act. Thank you, David. I appreciate the urgency. Let's get right to the heart of the matter. Indeed, it's a critical issue that we need to address. Thank you, David. I appreciate the urgency. Let's get right to the heart of the matter. Today we have the opportunity to shape the economic strategy of Swordsland for decades to come. The EPA has long stood as a key contention and debate point of the national art of NAP. This matter is a discussion of how Swordsland sees itself and how we position ourselves in the world. Our nation has taken very different economic approaches in the last 4 decades. Mr. President has decided to lean on promoting a market economy, which should give us a clear indicator. Should we decide to increase the EPA threshold to 49% or eliminate it entirely, it could spark an influx of foreign investment. Given our current economic predicament, this would be a significant boost. Promoting a market economy does not inherently translate to prosperity for all. It can lead to a concentration of wealth, with the rich getting richer, while the middle and working class struggle. We need to ensure that the benefits of the economic growth are shared equitably across all layers of Swedish society. I believe a free market fosters competition, which ultimately leads to innovation and economic growth. I understand your point of view, Mr. President, but we must also consider the potential pitfalls of unregulated capitalism. Mr. President, Lilias, shall we return to the subject of the EPA? Our current version of the Energy Protection Act dates back to 1949. President Alfonso's amendment raised the cap on foreign investment in Swedish energy companies up to 20%. In my view, it was a necessary step to attract foreign investment and stimulate our economy. We must remember that Swordsland was facing an economic crisis during this tenure, and these changes provide a lifeline for our energy industry. Wasn't this change a sign of desperation rather than a strategic move? The economic crisis during Alfonso's tenure did necessitate action, but we should not view the change to the Energy Protection Act as simply a desperate measure. It was a strategic decision aimed at modernizing our economy and promoting growth, while still preserving the core objective of the Act, protecting Swordland's energy sector. The Assembly has spoken on this matter, and as it stands, the Energy Protection Act of 1932 will not be repealed. It's clear that our colleagues have recognized the potential risk of exposing our energy sector to foreign ownership. While this doesn't end the debate, it does underline the importance of respecting our Assembly's decision. It's disappointing to see the Assembly resist change this much. Our debate is definitely not over. I respect the decision of the Assembly, Lilius. However, we mustn't allow this setback to deter us from exploring our options. The global landscape is ever evolving, and we must adapt accordingly. It's also important to remember that the Assembly's decision is not the final word. There is room for further legislative efforts and executive initiatives. When it comes to Energy Protection Act, I believe we should increase our threshold for foreign investment. In fact, my preference would be to remove the threshold entirely. This would undoubtedly strengthen energy institutions such as Gazprom, Swedish Petroleum. We've seen Rizia's interest in the former, and I know Lesbia has had its eye on the latter for some time. That's precisely what I'm worried about. We have to remember that we're dealing with national security as well as economics. Reverting to the Sol era 10% limit or keeping the law as it is would be a safer approach. We cannot risk our energy infrastructure falling into foreign hands, especially not to Rumsberg. I see the merit in both your arguments, yes, but we need to protect our national security, but we also need to consider the economic implications. Perhaps a mixed approach would work best. What if we increase the limit to 49%, thereby attracting foreign investment or maintaining Swedish control over critical energy sectors? How would changes to the Energy Protection Act affect prices within Swordland? With increased foreign investment, we could potentially see a decrease in energy prices. But we should also consider the potential impact on job security and national control of our energy sector. Changing the EPA Act could lead to increasing energy prices, as foreign entities could manipulate the market. With increased competition and foreign investment, we could also see a decrease in energy prices. The more players in the market, the more competitive the price will be. Considering potential foreign buyers such as Quenil, Rizia, Anraka, Rumsberg, and Lesbia, what are the worst case scenarios if they gain control over our hydroelectric, gas, or oil sectors? Think about it, Mr. President. If any one of those countries, but especially Rumsberg, gains control of our energy sector, they could cut off our power at any moment. We would also be forced to comply with any decisions they made regarding prices or environmental measures. There's no denying the potential risk of foreign buyers gaining control over critical sectors. We increase the foreign ownership threshold to 49%, we can attract more investment while mitigating those risks. While we may see entities from Quenil, Rizia, Anraka, and Rumsberg and Lesbia as potential threats, it's also crucial to see them as potential partners. That's a good point. The scenario Lilius mentions are possible, of course, but think about the economic growth and international relations that could be fostered. If we aim to deal more closely with Lesbia, for example, I very much doubt they'll settle for a mere 49% energy investment. How would the EPA Act changes impact corporations like Gazprom, which could sell to an entity under the revised laws? I believe you already know the answer to this, Mr. President. Gazprom could fall under foreign control, just like any other energy corporation. On the other hand, foreign investment would result in increased resources flowing to Gazprom and its ilk, and those resources could be channeled into further development of our energy sector. Yes, Gazprom could potentially sell to anyone, but wouldn't that be a show of the strength and attractiveness of our energy sector on the global stage? We can proceed. It's time to settle this subject. Given the turbulent economic landscape, maintaining the status quo of energy of the EPA Act could offer us stability. We are already open to foreign investment at a 20% threshold. Changing this percentage may introduce unexpected challenges and could complicate our foreign relations. Returning the threshold to 10%, as it was during the Seoul era, could protect us from undue foreign influence and ensure that our energy sector remains in storage hands. So the choices are 10, 20, and 49. How about a 30 or a 40? We must consider the far-reaching implications of our actions, especially in light of our recent dealings with Gazprom. Mr. President, your decisions to pursue co-investment with Rizia allows us to distribute the financial burden and mitigate risks. It also promotes regional cooperation, aligning well with our fiscal policies. A joint venture with Rizia is a strategic move, not a concession. It's a partnership that secures our place in the global energy landscape. With Swordland and Rizia's co-investing in Gazprom, there's a chance to build partnership that benefits both our economies. However, how we adjust the EPA could significantly impact the outcome. Sharing the burden with Rizia does provide some reassurance. However, if we raise the foreign ownership threshold, we must be wary of the influence of Rumsfeld. Our partnership with Rizia has proven beneficial. I suggest we maintain the current threshold. Let's not make hasty. Perhaps we should consider removing the threshold altogether. While your points are valid, Elias, we can't ignore the potential economic benefits. Raising the threshold could attract more investors and increase the value of our shares. Even though we're sharing the investment with Rizia, we should still prioritize Swordish control. Let's not consider reducing the foreign ownership limit. While your points are valid, Lilius, we can't ignore the potential of economic benefits. Raising the threshold could attract more investors and increase the value of our shares. Increasing the threshold might attract more foreign investors and increase the value of our stake, but of course we should ensure that Swordland's interests are safeguarded. Opting for a more balanced approach aligns well with our objective of maintaining positive trade relations without compromising our sovereignty. Our priority should be balancing the need for economic growth with maintaining national sovereignty. Perhaps a phased approach to increasing foreign ownership could be the answer. I would say we've covered the implications of your EPA decision fairly thoroughly, Mr. President. Our action should be guided by the best interests of our nation. Mr. President, it's time for you to make a decision. What will we do with the EPA? Yep, those are the options, 10, 20, or 49. Or remove it. I really wish there was something in between the 20 and 49. I want to go beyond 20 because I want to get the boost to the economy that we need right now to get out of this recession. But 49% is right there at the cutting edge of losing control of our energy sector to a foreign power. I'd like to have a little bit larger of a buffer than 1%. But it seems I don't have the option. So we will increase the foreign ownership threshold to 49%. This will increase foreign investment. Balanced approach will serve us well. This could attract significant foreign investment. It's a substantial increase. I fear we're opening ourselves up too much. The door to the room opened. Livia Suno carried a tray laden with an assortment of beverages. She was a little clumsy as she maneuvered around the room, refilling cups and glasses with tea, coffee, and water, as she's attempting to do her primary job of spying on us. Excuse me, gentlemen and madam, I've brought refreshments. Please be more considerate and ask before you enter next time. I'm sorry, I will. I thought the meeting had ended and wanted to refill the refreshments. As she finished serving the beverages, Livia retreated toward the door. She glanced around the room one last time before quietly backing out. The meeting resumed, our conversations growing slightly louder over the clinks of cups and glasses. While we are here, I will inform you all that I've been lending my expertise to Minister Benawal in relation to the Workers' Rights Bill. I believe it's crucial to ensure fair treatment for our workforce, and it is nearing presentation. Workers' rights are important. Your collaboration with Mr. Benawal is commendable. I hope it'll bring about positive change for our workforce. Thank you, Mr. President. The bill aims to prioritize workers' well-being. It's a step towards a more humane economic system. I share your sentiment, Mr. President. However, we must be careful to avoid encouraging anti-business tendencies. I concur, Mr. President. Ensuring the rights of our workers is paramount, although we must be cautious of any hidden agendas. Anyways, I've been working on our upcoming term budget meeting and a proposal for business taxation changes. Specifically, we're considering a range of 10% tax changes for small to medium enterprises and large corporations. This could be a significant move for our economic landscape. Such a taxation approach could indeed invigorate our economy, but we must ensure it doesn't burden our SMEs unduly. SMEs. Well, whatever it is. Such a taxation approach could indeed invigorate our economy, but we must ensure it doesn't burden our SMEs unduly. I appreciate your insight, Mr. President. Ensuring the survival and growth of our SMEs. The hell's SME? What the hell is SME? Acronyms. I hate acronyms. Of our state something something. I have a feeling that it's some sort of state corporation, which I shouldn't care about the state corporations. I should want them, whatever. Tax changes could indeed be a significant impact on our economy. We must consider their implications carefully. Large private corporations have enjoyed significant benefits and loopholes for a long time. They should pay their fair share. As the minister rose from their seats, the late morning light spilled into the room through their ornate windows. It seemed to signal the conclusion of the meeting. We have made some important decisions today, and let's wrap up for now and reconvene later if needed. Thank you for the discussion. I'll continue working on our priorities. Goodbye, everybody. See you at the term budget meeting. Until next time, dear colleagues, take care and see you soon. Alright, this is probably a time to wrap up this particular episode. It's getting a little long in the tooth. Anyway, I'm James Johnson, aka Softwareblade. This is my content. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If so, please smash that like button and consider subscribing. And until next time, all, peace.